morning. You have entered the Sunday service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of San Miguel de Allende. Although the fellowship is based in San Miguel, we are a gathering with participants today located in dozens of places. Zoom allows us to be together and connect with each other and share this experience. We're delighted to welcome each of you, regardless of where in the world you are right now, whatever your religious background or lack thereof, whatever your nationality, ethnicity, your gender identity, sexual orientation, whoever you love. No need to hide or pretend that you are something other than your truest and best self. My name is Mark Johanningsmeyer, and together with Judith Genya, we are your service leaders together. Please look in today's order of service, available online and in the Zoom login, and you'll find announcements about life in our fellowship. You'll find information about activities you can join, projects we support, our leadership, how you can become a member. Just go to www.uufsma.org. At the close of this service, there will be small breakout discussion groups. All you have to do is stay right here after the music ends. You'll be randomly assigned to one of several groups. If only one or two people show up in your group, sit tight, you'll be reassigned to a larger group. Those of you who are new to our fellowship, feel free to stay right where you are at that point, rather than entering one of the discussion groups. One of our leaders will chat with you briefly to get acquainted. And now, Andrea Kaufman will give us an update from the COVID-19 task force.
Hello, I'm Dr. Andrea Kaufman, representing the Fellowship's COVID-19 task force. We are a group of doctors, nurses, social workers, and members of the care team. We're trying to offer our best scientific advice to the board and to you. We're delighted to let you know that we are all working toward the fellowship's regathering service on October 24th. The amazing team of Paula, Diana, Diego, and Reverend Tom is putting together an opportunity for an in-person gathering, our first at the Aldea in a long time. It will be simultaneously broadcast on Zoom. Between now and then, the task force will continue monitoring COVID's fierce Delta variant and the new highly contagious Mu form. As October 24th approaches, we will review our guidelines for that meeting to help us maintain safety for all. You will receive more information in the coming weeks, and if you're interested in reading the UUA guidelines, you will find their guidelines at the link posted in the chat box. We're glad to report that the 40+ population in SMA will be offered their second dose of the COVID vaccine tomorrow and Tuesday. This is only for SMA residents who received their first AstraZeneca shot here in June. This is not an opportunity for a booster shot. If you have questions about booster shots, please talk to your own doctor or follow the CDC guidelines. Please also talk to your doctor about the flu shot. Not all doctors order quantities of the flu vaccine, so let your doctor know soon that you are interested and you want to receive it. Just a reminder that if you have had potential COVID exposure while traveling or visiting family, friends, or neighbors, please don't hesitate to get a test and isolate for a few days. until you're really certain that you're not contagious. May we all strive for compassion in our relationships and care for each other through the uncertainties of these challenging times. Now to Judith and Mark for opening words and chalice lighting.
Good morning. I'm Judith Genia, and I also would like to welcome you to this service. We are in the midst in the Jewish calendar of the days of awe. From Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, through Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the Jewish people observe these days of awe. We have the opportunity to reflect on our past year, what we have done, how we have loved, and who we are today in this present moment. We seek ways to remedy those we have hurt or injured and ask for grace in the coming year that we may live more fully as our best human self. We remember those we have lost and honor their memory as a blessing. This is much like the commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the terrible events that occurred on September 11, 2001, which we are acknowledging today. The American people were shattered by our vulnerability and loss and embarked on a 20 years war out of fear. That war has finally ended, but not the mourning for the lives lost in New York City, the Pentagon, and Pennsylvania, as well as those lost in Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan that continue in our hearts and souls. 9/11 has never ended for those who responded, those who contracted illnesses, children who lost parents, everyone who lost family and friends, and all of those and us whose lives were forever changed that day. Now Mark will light the chalice.
The light is a symbol that has been used all over the world for the presence of the holy, for a sign of the gathering of the people, and the deepest reality within ourselves. We acknowledge that and celebrate our presence together.
Good morning. I'm Dan Newspiel, the president of your fellowship, and I add my welcome to all of you. Please join Diego Vargas and me in reciting our spoken covenant, which should appear on your screen. We respect the interdependent web of life and work for a just and peaceful world. We encourage the search for truth and meaning, strive for compassion in our relationships, and seek values that will benefit our lives and the lives of others. This is our covenant.
Respetamos todos los estilos de vida dentro de su red interdependiente y trabajamos por un mundo justo y pacífico. Alentamos la búsqueda de la verdad y la comprensión total. Nos esforzamos por mantener compasión en nuestras relaciones y buscamos valores que beneficien nuestras vidas y las vidas de los demás. Este es nuestro convenio.
I'm Karen Woolhouse. I grew up in Canada and spent my working years in the US as a permanent resident. I'm now retired and I'm a member of UU congregations in Halifax, Nova Scotia and Lake County, Florida. I also spent 3 winters in San Miguel, where I was a member of UUFSMA, and I was privileged to serve on the endowment committee. Like everyone else, I can remember exactly where I was when the news broke on September 11th, 2001. That morning, my furniture had been loaded on the moving van to go from my home in Stamford, Connecticut, just north of New York City, to my new home back in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where I grew up. I was sitting at the kitchen counter when my nephew called to tell me the news and ask if I was okay, since I often went into the city. I walked down to the marina on Stamford Harbor and saw across the water the plume of smoke rising from the World Trade Center as they burned. The rest of the day was spent in a neighbor's apartment watching the TV. I remember the shock and incredulity at the idea that the World Trade Center could actually be burning with all those people trapped inside, and the horror that someone had thought of using airplanes loaded with innocent passengers as missiles to cause the fires. There was the empathy with the people on those airplanes flying to their doom. Remember the tearful final cell phone calls to people on the ground? We were glued to our TV sets that day. Meanwhile, US airspace had been closed to non-military travel. So the flights in the air on the way to the US from Europe could not continue and had to land and wait for days until they could go on to the US. Every airport in Eastern Canada was filled with giant airliners parked, and hundreds of thousands of passengers had to find shelter. Towns opened their gymnasiums and fire halls as shelter for the travelers, and people opened their homes to as many travelers as they could. The tiny town of Gander, Newfoundland, had a big airport because of its history as the refueling stop for transatlantic flights when planes still needed to make a refueling stop. So it received 7,000 stranded passengers and managed to find shelter for all of them for days. There were many official expressions of gratitude to the people of Eastern Canada for receiving all those stranded flights, and the Gander experiences have even inspired a popular Broadway musical, Come From Away. Later, the news started reporting how many people had died, especially in Greenwich, Connecticut, adjacent to my town of Stamford, where so many people working in the finance industry in the World Trade Center had lived. All those people in their 30s and 40s who died. It made a huge hole in Greenwich, as so many of them were community volunteers. The girls' soccer team lost its coach. Likewise, the high school track club. Many churches lost wardens. And of course, there were suddenly so many orphans for the schools to be working with. After 9/11, we got into the era of homeland security and increasingly stringent border crossing rules. I remember how rude the homeland security agents were at first, and the many stories of people detained for hours in airless rooms because their names were similar to those of criminals or other people on special attention lists. It was definitely guilty until proved innocent when crossing from Canada into the US in those days, in spite of the long history of friendliness between New England and the Canadian Maritime provinces. The agents have been trained in courtesy since then, but there is still apprehension when one approaches the land border crossings into the US. You can't take anything for granted now. Canadians used to go back and forth so casually, particularly to shop. It was common to hear people say that they were going down to the States for a long weekend. My perception is that that is much less than it used to be. Border crossing is not a friendly experience anymore. The effects of the attack on the World Trade Center have gone far beyond the people who died that day and the property damage. It's my opinion that the US has become a different place, with so much emphasis on militarism and advanced weaponry for police forces, and even more freedom for individuals to own guns. Huge sums of money have been borrowed to fight in Iran and Afghanistan, And so many people have died or been maimed in those wars arising from 9/11. Could the people who planned 9/11 possibly have foreseen how much damage they were doing to the US?
One of the ways that we demonstrate care for one another and others here in the fellowship, we name various joys and concerns that people in the congregation have submitted. Today, for each joy or concern, I will drop a stone in this bowl of water. As the ripples move outward, so our connection to these persons or situations named extends beyond the original time and place, out into the world. Now, if you would like to share a joy or concern for next week's service, feel free to email Reverend Tom Rossiello. If you would like to add a joy or concern right now, look at the chat box link at the bottom of your screen, and then you can type your message in so that others may see it and know it. I share with you a joy. We celebrate Stan Allen for his ongoing work with Abba House in Celaya, working with refugees and migrants passing through our area. Stan has been nominated for a Social Justice Award by the Unitarian Universalist Association. A concern: good wishes to Ed Tudor, Gary Belkin's husband. Ed fractured his hip in a fall on Friday. Yesterday, Ed had surgery to pin the fracture. Fortunately, it seems to have been a minor break. The plans are that he'll be discharged today and recuperate at home. There were several concerns regarding all those touched by the September 11 attacks and those who still suffer the physical or psychological effects from that day and the recovery efforts. This for the children who lost parents. For all families of those killed and who live on with their absence. For first responders and their courageous work and the enduring illnesses contracted during their work. For the people of Gander, Newfoundland, we just heard about this. These folks offered food and shelter, hospitality, and caring for some 7,000 airline passengers stranded because the air traffic had been stopped on that day and the days following. A joy for Cynthia Sterling, celebrating her birthday today. Happy birthday, Cynthia. Gratitude that Mexico has decriminalized abortion, and concern that the United States continue to uphold that right and that opportunity. And for each joy or sorrow or appreciation or concern that have an important place in your life and mine, but have gone unspoken, we hold these concerns and each other in our minds and hearts.
In a moment, we are going to hear the beautiful music of Avinu Malkeinu, which is one of the most important prayers on Yom Kippur. It means Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. It is said or sung when announcing one's repentance and asking to be inscribed in the book of life or the book of living a good life. The words that you're going to hear mean this: Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voices. We have strayed from our values. Have compassion on us and our children. Rid us of disease, war, and hunger. Rid us of every oppressor and adversary. Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us for good in the book of life. Avinu Malkeinu, make this a good new year for us. Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voices.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu,
Yom Kippur will begin this Wednesday with Kol Nidre and exist for 24 hours. Judaism exists in community. These are the days of setting oneself right with your inner self, your God, and those who are your community. We look inward and see if we have missed the mark with anything or anyone and seek to set it right. We ask for atonement, to be forgiven. We offer spiritual cleansing and renewal, to atone for transgressions against our fellow human beings. We must first make peace with one another. The Jewish tradition emphasizes that by returning and renewing ourselves and our relationship with others, we are doing our part to repair the larger world, the primary task of each person, called Tikkun Olam. Perhaps this is a year for second chances, of new beginnings, of finding our true home. After a turbulent 2020 and an even more turbulent 2021, we would all like to get to the calm after the storm and feel more stable, more peaceful. Still, we have a lot of cleanup work awaiting us along that path. The cleanup work is the theme of these times in the Jewish calendar. The month leading to the new year and culminating 10 days past Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, are the times we perform shlichot, or forgiveness, and teshuvah, returning or repentance. We seek forgiveness, first recognizing our nature and releasing ourselves from all promises made, Kol Nidre, confronting them, asking forgiveness, Avinu Malkeinu. And as we make our aspirations at the last moment, as the inscriptions in the book of life are about to be locked in, we proclaim that the compassionate one will find us and offer forgiveness. These are the days of awe, and as we try to save our planet, our institutions, our expectations, our understanding, our greatest action is perhaps our awareness, our return to compassion, to care, to love. As Karen mentioned, Canadians after 9/11 exemplified compassion in action and caring for the stranger, both a key Jewish and UU value. May this coming year be a year of new possibilities and open a chapter that honors and celebrates life. May we break through fear and confusion and offer forgiveness to ourselves and each other. May we heal our home, this planet, and all broken hearts. And now Paula will give us our offering instructions.
Thank you, Judith and Mark, for those important and very wise words during this holy time of the year. My name is Paula Peace. As chair of your Sunday Service Committee, it's my privilege today to share a few words about our important and impressive community outreach. Our fellowship helps support 12 local NGOs and has been an important contributor to Centro Infantil. This program provides a holistic learning approach for children from impoverished homes in the San Miguel area. The program is free and available to over 100 students who attend a very high-quality preschool. The teaching staff are all certified early education teachers who evaluate progress among the children on developing key skills like learning to write their names, solving simple arithmetic problems by counting, and using dialogue and communication to solve problems. Before the pandemic, there were also more than 80 younger children from 3 months to 3 years old who were cared for in a free daycare center. During the pandemic, SELA preschool teachers have given classes 4 days a week using television, the internet, and paper homework assignments. Packages of basic food for a family of 4 from Feed the Hungry were also available to families. Staff from Centro Infantil identified 40 families in need of more food, plus cleaning supplies, face masks, and digital thermometers, and provided these through a special fundraising campaign. Perhaps the most compelling reason to support Centro Infantil is the academic success of their graduates. Follow-up research on 10 classes from SELA has found higher than average grades when the children were compared with their peers in primary and secondary schools. During 2021, our fellowship is sponsoring 10 children in the SELA preschool. We receive updates about each child as well as photos. All of us can be proud to help these children, many of whom live in great poverty. They may not have a floor, running water, or a toilet to use in their home, but with an opportunity to attend Centro Infantil, they have a much better chance of success in public school and beyond. Thank you for your donations in the past and this afternoon. And thinking of this fellowship, your donations need not only be monetary. Gifts of time and talent are also very much needed, and it goes in particular to produce a weekly Sunday service. As a matter of fact, today is our all virtual Zoom Sunday service number 77, which we first began producing on Sunday, March 22nd, 2020. This has been an exciting and challenging 18 months for the amazing audiovisual team of Diego Vargas, Joseph Plummer, Diana Amaya, and Dan Neuspiel. Also centrally important has been the leadership of Kathy Canepa, co-chair with me of the Sunday Committee, and Denise Gallipo, who is our very busy Sunday service manager. Noteworthy is that we will begin 1 week from today to hopefully combine live transmission from the Hotel Aldea while continuing Zoom broadcasts. For now, just the tech staff will be in attendance at the Aldea. We on the Sunday Service Committee are reorganizing this fall and ask you to consider joining us. We would welcome new members on the committee who could assist us in a number of ways. And whether you are here in San Miguel or in the US or Canada, we can use your help in coordinating, service leading, and researching. Please contact Denise at denise.uufsma@gmail.com if you want to learn more about helping with Sunday services or volunteer for other areas in the fellowship where you think your skills might fit. Our offering music today is a stunningly beautiful musical prayer, one of the most beloved contemporary choral works, O Magnum Mysterium, written in 1994 by American composer Morton Lauridson. I hope it speaks to your heart as it does to mine. Thank you for all you each do for this UU Fellowship and for your generosity in supporting our Mexican neighbors. The offering will now be collected and most gratefully received.
Soon after the 9/11, a video surfaced that was taken by a visitor with Osama bin Laden, in which he gloated on the fall of the Twin Towers. It was in the spirit that Judith spoke of just moments ago that I then wrote this little reflection that was published in the book September 11th, Maryland Voices, titled The Bin Laden Tapes, A Time for Soul Searching. It's hard to view the Bin Laden tapes without feeling a powerful sense of disgust. The joy and glee he and his guests show over the success of the 9/11 mission is revolting. The mission exceeded their most optimistic estimates. Praise be to Allah. Yet, as I watched, a nagging sense of déjà vu begins to nag at the back of my consciousness. There is a fleeting memory that tells me something about this is familiar. Then it hits me. Of course, General Schwarzkopf and the Pentagon briefers during the Persian Gulf War. Yes, that's it. It's the same sense of glee about our smart bombs going right down a chimney and completely obliterating their target. Videos of a mission accomplished successfully beyond our most optimistic expectations amid cheers from the press corps. God bless America. Yet there remains something very different about the present tapes. Objectively, bin Laden's glee now and our glee then looked very much the same. But subjectively, there is a big difference. We know all too well the horrible human toll of his mission. We have felt the grief of the thousands whose lives were snuffed out on September 11. But 10 years ago, we watched the destruction of Iraqi targets from above, aloof to the human suffering below. Did the victims of our missiles then feel the same disgust at our glee as we now feel toward bin Laden? If we had been able to see the human effect of our technical accomplishment, might we have been remorseful? Yes, there is something very different about the present case. As Noam Chomsky has pointed out, for the first time, we are on the receiving end of terrorism. It does feel very different when the bombs are aimed at us. Of course, we knew there was collateral damage from our airstrikes against Iraq. Yet, as we now know, there are unavoidable civilian casualties in our bombing of Afghanistan. But we feel little remorse for the non-civilian victims, just as bin Laden feels no remorse for the victims of his bombing of the Pentagon and the World Trade Center. There were no innocent victims there, he says. In his mind, they were all active participants in the military and commercial defilement of the holy lands of Islam. Thus, they were all the enemy, and the enemy is evil and must be destroyed. It is the will of Allah. Haven't we similarly demonized Osama bin Laden? Don't we also see Al-Qaeda as evil and our mission to destroy it as blessed by God? We are as convinced of our goodness and our enemy's evil as they are convinced of their own goodness and our evil. Each is blind to the humanity of the other, and thus is also blind to the evil within our own souls. A kind of Manichaean fundamentalism has gripped both sides. Such a mindset can only lead to more terror. I fear that the only winner of our war on terrorism will be terror itself. Let me add a brief postscript. As we look back at the events of September 11th, our response to them, we can now see they have framed an era. As victims, our desire for vengeance in the name of security numbed our moral sensibility. For 20 years, we've been blind to the effects of our violence on those we have attacked. Indeed, in the war on terrorism, it is terrorism itself that has won. Now, having to finally admit defeat in Afghanistan, let us hope we might regain our moral sensibilities.
For more than 15 years, I worked in the shadow of the World Trade Center. First, 1 block north on Park Place, overlooking the Hudson River. Later, I worked in the architecturally significant Woolworth Building. Built in the early 1800s, it was then the tallest building in the world. And finally, at 110 Church Street, which became the final resting place for one engine of American Airlines Flight 11, which at 8:46 a.m. on a bright September day in 2001 crashed into Building 1 of the World Trade Center and seared into our memories the event known as 9/11. In commuting to my offices from Brooklyn Heights, I frequently took the subway that stopped at the World Trade Center. How well I remember taking the shortest route to my office, walking across the 5-acre white marble plaza. This so-called public space formed the courtyard of buildings 1 and 2. I was an ant, dwarfed by 2 enormously cold box-like towers, which the critic and writer Lewis Mumford called those glass and metal filing cabinets. The so-called public plaza was built above street level after the local streets and avenues had been bulldozed. It was devoid of trees, benches, and for most of my time in the area, sculptures or anything living or of human scale. Frequently, strong winds created by the towers, sometimes reaching 60 miles per hour, swept down the buildings and across the plaza, making passage dangerous without holding on to the ropes strung across that barren space. Few foolish souls ventured that path. Like most of you, I will never forget what I saw on television and experienced on September 11, 2001. Fortunately, I was not in New York City that day, but on eastern end of Long Island with family members who had gathered to observe my mother's death at age 88. We mourned not only her death from natural causes after a long life lived well, but also the deaths of over 2,600 mostly young and vibrant souls whose lives were snuffed out so shockingly. The tragedy touched us all and changed our lives. It provided the pretext for fighting terrorism the world over, and thus began a 2 decades-long war in Afghanistan. It sparked the spread of Islamophobia. The FBI, the CIA, and Homeland Security developed investigative and screening techniques based on racial, cultural, and religious stereotyping. During the past 2 decades, we increasingly became a nation of frightened and suspicious citizens, where many were ready to sacrifice our ideals of civil rights, liberties, and justice to counter the threats of terrorism. Before the dust had settled and the tons of debris had been removed, planners, citizens, and politicians turned to envisioning the recreation of a new World Trade Center. Urban planning theories and practices post-World War II were influenced by architects and builders like Le Corbusier, a pioneer of modern architecture, and Robert Moses, the 1950s master builder who molded modern New York to fit his vision for the city. Their theories and practices influenced urban planning for decades. This planning approach resulted in the demolition of large swaths of the city, obliterating historical, residential, and commercial communities, and replacing them with the likes of large urban megamalls, office buildings, superhighways, and housing projects. This was a top-down style, supported by government, banks, and businesses, often without input from the general public. Beginning in the 1960s, new theories about how urban planning should be approached began to gather strength. Published by Random House in 1962, The Death and Life of Great American Cities influenced the course of city planning. Its author, Jane Jacobs, was a resident of Greenwich Village, a vibrant residential and commercial area just north of the World Trade Center, home to a widely racially, sexually, and economically diverse population, and alive with a mix of commercial spots, restaurants, jazz clubs, coffee houses, offices, small manufacturing spaces, an old age home, a hospital, and public housing. Jane looked at what elements made for vibrant neighborhoods and livable cities. She looked at what existing and who lived in these neighborhoods and how existing conditions provided mutual support. Jane looked closely at New York City's famous street grid patterns, avenues that run north and south, and streets running east and west. She studied sidewalks, pedestrian traffic, and what and how they contributed to a vibrant city. She looked at street life in the mix of residential and small commercial spaces, the corner store, the importance of front porches and stoops. Jane's widely popular and influential work focused on the strength and importance of existing communities, listening to and organizing voices of a community, a bottoms-up approach to development and renewal, rather than imposing a redevelopment plan that might look good on paper or in clean scale models. Jane's writings and lectures and political activism offered a different path than the one offered by those who pushed for giant bulldoze projects of urban renewal. Her theories and methodology provided a counterbalance to Le Corbusier and Moses and became increasingly accepted, taught in college and universities, and utilized in contemporary urban and regional planning. After the destruction of the 7 buildings of the World Trade Center, a blueprint for transformation began to emerge with collaboration from residents, community leaders, local stakeholders, and importantly, families who had lost loved ones. This blueprint was influenced, at least in part, by the teachings and ideas of Jane Jacobs. The original street grids were largely restored. The new World Trade Center Plaza returned to street level, offered an easily accessible and usable human-sized space to sit, read, relax, and reflect. Birdsong can be heard from over 400 ash and oak trees in the plaza, green in spring and summer, brilliantly multicolored in the fall. The memorial twin reflecting pools built in the footprints of the original towers, each nearly an acre in size, features the largest man-made waterfall in North America and offers space to pay homage to those who lost their lives in September 11th. The single new World Trade Center tower, 1,776 feet high, 1776, the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere, was completed in May 2013. In many ways, it looks to the future and incorporates many of the lessons learned from prior decades of urban redevelopment and scientific advances. This skyscraper is vastly more energy efficient, more ecological than what was destroyed on September 11th. It was designed to eliminate those 60-mile-an-hour winds which swept down and around the old towers that made the old plaza unusable. This space is open to light. There is a new, dramatically improved public transit hub linking the entire New York and New Jersey metropolitan region. The overall design and resurrection of the World Trade Center is a testament to what can be achieved by looking to the future, by listening to the voices of the community, and by applying lessons learned from the past. In the face of the terrible losses of September 11th, 2001, together we built back better. So may it be.